I'm Gregor Thompson, I'm a philosopher and a writer, and I know what the meaning of life is. Welcome to The Struggle. This episode is brought to you by The Struggle newsletter. This is a weekly email newsletter in which I send out for free every Sunday a short article concerning the art of embracing struggle. If you feel restricted in life, if something is holding you back, perhaps it's time to struggle your way towards freedom. If you're trying to be productive, you're trying to be healthy and to achieve your dreams, perhaps you're chasing the wrong thing. A lot of us believe that we should be aiming for happiness, but this is an unwise pursuit, as happiness comes and goes without any control from us. However, there is a way to be more fulfilled with life, and that is to embrace struggle, to exercise, to eat healthily, to have uncomfortable conversations, to take career risks, to discover who you are, and to be autonomous. That's the way to break free from whatever it is that's restricting you. And that's why I created a newsletter. Along with the article, I also provide tips, strategies, and recommendations such as movies, music, podcasts, and recipes to help along the way. To sign up for free, go to gregorthompson.com. The link will be in the show notes. Confirm your subscription and make sure you check your spam folder for your welcome newsletter and add me to your contacts to continue to receive it in your inbox every week for free. And that's it. You're on your way to struggling more and being more productive, healthy, and motivated. Now, let's get on with the struggle. This is episode 37 of The Struggle with me, Gregor Thompson. Now, last week we spoke about the role that dopamine plays regarding movement, motivation, and reward processing, how our modern world is rife with extremely dopaminergic activities, behaviours, and substances that we should be cautious of, and how we can leverage dopamine for fulfillment. Now, I said at the end of that episode that dopamine is not the full story. If we only acted in ways that boosted dopamine levels, we would collapse in an exhausted mess. Now, I know there are a plethora of content creators out there telling you the answer's in the work. Meaning is in the grind, and you have to grind yourself into an exhausted mess to succeed. But this is far from the truth. As much as work, dopamine, and delayed gratification is important, there needs to actually be some gratification. You need to stop and smell the roses regularly. This means stopping to appreciate the world around you and be comfortable in the present moment. Because when you're constantly working, boosting dopamine levels in your brain, you're not really living in reality. You're living within an imagined future. You're living for this imagined better version of yourself, which can be enticing because it's better than the version of yourself you are right now. But that version isn't real until you start paying attention to the present moment, to yourself as you are now. Now, this may be difficult for some, because most of the people who are constantly working are being dragged by some unconscious insufficiency born from their pasts. So the idea of sitting within themselves as they are now may sound unbearable, because they've told themselves for so long that they're insufficient now and must get better. Now, this is where serotonin comes in. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter, like dopamine, but it regulates a range of activities such as behaviour, mood, memory, and gastrointestinal homeostasis. And although most people associate serotonin with mood, it also plays a role in emotions, appetite, stress, addiction, sexual pleasure, sleep, pain perception, cerebral vascular tone, and central respiratory drive. And it also has other functions throughout the body, such as ocular, cardiovascular, pulmonary, endocrine, and metabolic. Now, based on my god-awful pronunciation of some of those words, and for the purposes of this podcast, we're only concentrating on serotonin's neurological and psychological effects, and how to leverage it for good. Now, there is such a thing as too much serotonin, which can cause neurological issues such as agitation, excitement, insomnia, confusion, and anxiety, whereas decreased or insufficient serotonin activity is central to many mental health issues such as depression and anxiety. So it stands to reason that if we were to increase serotonin activity in a depressed person's brain, they would perhaps start to feel better. But how do we do that? Well, there's clinical solutions such as serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs. These are drugs that are usually the first line of medical intervention for people with moderate to severe depression or anxiety. These drugs increase the serotonin concentration or maximize serotonin receptors' potentiality. So if dopamine is responsible for movement, motivation and reward processing, or the future, serotonin is responsible for feelings of gratitude, appreciation, and love for the present. So if there's little dopamine flowing through our brains, we're not moving forward, we're not bettering our futures. And if there's little serotonin flowing through our brains and bodies, we feel depressed, anxious, and unhappy in the present, to put it simply. If we focus too much on dopamine, we're living within that imagined future at the neglect of the present, leading to the present feeling like it's not enough because it can't possibly live up to our imagined future in which we have bigger muscles, bigger paychecks, or a bigger house. Whereas here's the interesting thing. If we focus too much on our present, we'll start to cater to our every urge. We may eat too much junk food, watch too much television, scroll through social media too much, play too many video games. Now, these behaviours may increase serotonin when enjoyed in moderation, but when we chronically do this, it will inevitably lead to decreased serotonin and decreased dopamine, because we will eventually make the state of lying down, watching or playing or scrolling our baseline. So the thought of getting up and doing something difficult like exercising will be unbearable. And this chronic state will lead to less serotonin because we will be less satisfied with ourselves, less grateful for our present, as well as feel less good about ourselves because we might overeat or fail to do anything productive. So too much dopamine over-concentrates on the future by neglecting the present. But when we concentrate on the present too much, it doesn't lead to more serotonin, it leads to less serotonin and less dopamine. So in a way, it's perhaps more important to get your serotonin in order. And the way to do this, as I've said before in this podcast, is to balance your days between dopaminergic activities and serotonergic activities. The goal here is to build healthy and productive habits that will better your future whilst also having times of gratitude, pride, appreciation, love, and experiencing the present without the future nagging at your psyche. So what can we do to increase serotonin concentration without pharmacology? Well, there are studies that suggest that exposure to bright light increases serotonin. Of course, this makes sense as a treatment for seasonal depression, but studies have shown it to be effective outside of dark winter months. Now, practically, what does this mean? Well, neuroscientist Andrew Huberman suggests getting bright light in the morning by going outside for 10 to 20 minutes whilst the sun is low in the sky. This includes on overcast days, but you may need to stay outside for closer to 20 minutes on these days. If this isn't feasible, using a lamp designed for seasonal affective disorder, which provides more light lux than your normal indoor lights, is a viable option, again in the morning. Another strategy is exercise, which kills two birds, as exercise is also an activity for your future self, but we of course feel good and proud of ourselves after a workout, and therefore feel good in the present. Another strategy is diet. A poor diet of junk food may increase dopamine, but it does so in unhealthy and fabricated ways and can cause addiction, whereas a healthy diet is ideal for your future self as you'll be healthier and your present self as you'll feel good in the present. Specifically, there's some evidence that tryptophan increases serotonin. Now, tryptophan is present in foods like milk, cheese, turkey, and other protein-rich foods. However, tryptophan needs carbohydrates to reach the brain, so it's best to eat tryptophan-rich foods with carbs. Now, I'll link an article on tryptophan-rich foods below for more on this, as well as all the studies and statistics and information that I relay on this podcast down in the show notes. Another diet-related strategy is to eat for your gut. Serotonin isn't just present in the brain, but your gut as well. Your gut releases serotonin to help speed up digestion. Serotonin is central to the brain-gut axis, along with the gut microbiome. That's the collection of microorganisms that live in your gut. As well as this, serotonin is present in your intestinal lining. So eating a diet that's good for your gut is good for serotonin and therefore mood. So firstly, try to eat at least 30 different plants per week because your gut loves variety. Now this includes seeds, nuts, beans and spices. You can also eat fibre-rich foods, which is great for your gut, such as oats, whole grains, fruits, vegetables and beans. And lastly, eating probiotic foods such as yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi and garlic. Now, so far, I've only suggested external solutions to increasing serotonin. But what about internal solutions? Solutions that affect our emotional and psychological states. Practicing gratitude is a great practice for increasing serotonin. Now for me, simply writing down a few things I'm grateful for every day didn't work particularly well. So instead it helps to really meditate on how grateful you are for one fundamental thing in your life, such as a partner, a family member, friend, one of your 5 senses, an ability, and then concentrate on how hurt you'd be if you lost that thing. This may sound depressing. It's not really. It actually will make you more grateful for that thing. Imagining yourself without that thing ensures you appreciate having it in this moment. This is actually a Stoic practice called negative visualization, in which you imagine all of the potential bad things that could happen to you, so you're grateful they're not happening, and so you're better prepared for when they are. Another strategy for the internal is meditation. Evidence suggests that meditation can increase serotonin levels, which makes sense as you're literally sitting in the present moment, attempting to stay there. So building a meditation practice is useful, whether that be guided with apps such as Headspace and Waking Up, or just sitting without intention or even without a timer set, doing nothing and observing your thoughts and experience. And lastly, perhaps the most important practice is spending time with loved ones. Now this is an important behaviour. It brings you back to the present experience. It stops you from thinking about the future. You start enjoying the present moment. These times will be what you look back on with love. So spending time with loved ones, experiencing that time without thinking about all the productive things you need to do, is vital for fulfillment and appreciation. So to sum up, it's important to stop concentrating on the future regularly to appreciate the present. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter central to appreciation as well as mood, sleep, behaviour, memory, pain perception, sexual pleasure, as well as digestion. Too little serotonin can cause mood disorders such as depression and anxiety. If we focus too much on dopamine, we neglect the present in favour of the future. But if we focus too much on the present and cater to our every urge, we decrease dopamine and serotonin. So we must find ways to balance our time between dopaminergic activities and serotonergic activities. There are many ways to increase serotonin. Some are external, such as exercise, light exposure and diet, and some are internal, such as gratitude, mindfulness and social connection. So that concludes this 2-part series on dopamine and serotonin. I hope you found these episodes useful. I certainly need to listen to a lot of the advice in them myself. Now, the next episode is a special one, as it's the 2nd ever guest episode of the Struggle podcast, so stay tuned for that next week. In the meantime, the answer lies in the struggle. So keep on struggling. Just a few more things before you take off. Firstly, thank you for watching. It genuinely means a lot to see people viewing and liking the content. Second, if you're enjoying the content, please subscribe and share. Those are the best ways you can support the podcast. As you can probably tell, I don't have a ton of fancy equipment. I don't have a team behind me helping with marketing or editing the podcast. I don't have much resources. So any help is greatly appreciated. You can also stay up to date with everything I'm doing on social media. All of the links will be in the show notes. And you can also listen to the Struggle podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And lastly, keep on struggling.